Joining us now is Malachi O'Doherty. He's the journalist and author of Gerry Adams, An Unauthorised Life. In other words, a man who knows the character at the centre of this whole question really well. And how come, Malachi, we are even talking about paying out compensation to this man?
Well, Gerry Adams was interned in 1972. 1972. He was a leading Republican. He denies that he was a senior member of the IRA, but those who interned him assumed that he was. He was the internment was a system for locking people up without putting them through the trial process, and it was a disaster because it was planned that it would basically wrap up the IRA campaign and get rid of everybody, get them off the street. And indeed, it was followed by an escalation of IRA violence. So in that sense, it was a disaster. Gerry Adams contested recently, just a few years ago, the internment order that was issued against him on the grounds that it wasn't signed by the Secretary of State, who was William Whitelaw at that time. And he won his case, which, is a bit surprising because you would think that the document having been signed by a government official was valid enough. But no, he won his case. Along comes the legacy legislation, the idea that you would not proceed with criminal actions and legal cases against people involved in the Troubles, whether members of the IRA, loyalist paramilitaries, or the British Army. Keir Starmer came along and said, no, we're going to overturn that legislation. We're going to go back and open these cases again.
And why did he need to do that? I mean, what was in it for Keir Starmer's government to say, we need to overturn this?
Well, what was in it for him was that he was meeting a major protest within Northern Ireland. Every political party in Northern Ireland was arguing that these cases shouldn't be closed, that they should proceed. And maybe Starmer was bounced into it at a debate in Queen's University when a law lecturer called Kieran McAvoy basically asked him from the floor in front of a sympathetic audience, and he said, no, we will overturn it. Now, these are not, that is in process, and the legislation which will follow from it will perhaps not be as explicit as the legislation that preceded it, but still in all, cases will now go ahead. There will be prosecutions of people who committed crimes during the Troubles. And legal cases include civil cases, I presume, because that's why we're now talking about Gerry Adams. The argument is being put now that the best reason, and it's the stupidest reason you could imagine to my mind, that the best reason for not reversing the legislation and allowing cases to proceed is that Gerry Adams will get his compensation for having been interned. And that's like saying we should do away with the pensioners' bus pass because Gerry Adams might get one. It's just a daft idea that you base policy or legislation on policy or principle without considering the actual nuances of it and the content of it, but you do it simply because Gerry Adams will benefit. It's bizarre. It's bizarre that anyone with a political head on their shoulders would come up with an idea like that.
You can hear, though, how triggering that would be to so many people in the UK. I mean, the bus pass doesn't quite cover it, does it?
Well, I mean, the fact is that Gerry Adams is a detested man. There's no doubt about it. He's got his following and he's liked in parts of Ireland and by Sinn Féin, and there's a legendary status to him. But yes, he is a man who touches people's nerves and funny bones in a particular way. And I don't particularly admire him or agree with him myself. But I do think that if serious political figures are discussing how you reform the law, how you deal with the whole past of Northern Ireland, with all the outstanding cases and all the outstanding crimes, and you measure that against the possibility that Gerry Adams will benefit because of a cock-up made by the government themselves, a cock-up in introducing internment in the first place, which was a disaster, and a cock-up in the documentation around Gerry Adams's case. I mean, weigh things in the balance. You do not surely define your legislation by what individual might benefit.
Even if the individual's a terrorist.
Even if the individual's a terrorist. The point is that there was a mistake made in the internment order, and a court determined that he was entitled to compensation
Gerry
for that.
Adams probably made a few mistakes in his time as well, I would imagine.
I would say he was quite deliberate in some of the bad things that he did during his life. It's so to talk about mistakes. But the reality is simply, to my mind, that you do not negotiate or discuss or debate legislative reform on the basis of one individual's likely benefit from it.
Do you think that?
I mean, surely yourselves, you think that's daft.
Knowing Malachi, knowing his mind as you do, he has obviously pursued the British government for compensation before. You think he would prosecute this? You think he would happily seek to try and obtain that compensation now he knows it could well be a possibility?
Oh yeah, primary concern for Gerry Adams is to establish the legitimacy of the IRA campaign in retrospect. That is it. I mean, I was recently sued by Jerry Kelly, one of the top IRA men who led the escape from the Maze prison, because I said that he'd shot a prison officer during the escape. I was sued. The case was thrown out after 4.5 years by a judge who just said it was ludicrous that somebody who had boasted about his own part in an IRA jailbreak should be suing for damage to his character. But that is what the IRA is concerned about. That is what senior members of Sinn Féin are concerned about. They're concerned about the retrospective legitimation of the IRA campaign.
So the importance of this compensation for Adams isn't necessarily about the money, but it's about a legitimation. The legitimation that it would confer would be that the British government was accepting that his internment was wrong.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think the British government, the court has accepted that his internment was wrong. The British government accepted by 1972, when William Whitelaw came in as Secretary of State, that internment had been a massive mistake, that they'd made the problem worse rather than better. And they went on to provide special category status for convicted prisoners. But, how deciding thing on the basis of how one person benefits, it just seems to have.
So Malachi, do you think he'll end up getting it? I mean, because I can see how you're arguing this as part of a bigger process. We're hearing the kind of noise that will come from this in the UK at Westminster, and I'm interested to.
That.
Well, I just want to know if you think he'll actually get the money. Do you think that the Labour government will end up in a position where it is paying Gerry Adams taxpayer-funded compensation?
Well, I think they may do. I mean, they've paid compensation to other IRA members for wrongful arrest. I can cite one case of a senior Republican who got compensation because he had left a bar before somebody coming to assassinate him had arrived, and yet he got compensation because the police had not done sufficient to protect him. And he got £15,000 for that. I mean, he wasn't even threatened. He wasn't in any danger at all. The UDA had set up a plan to shoot him and arrived too late to do it, and still he got compensation. The British government has been very gentle with the IRA over the years. I mean, the British virtual amnesty, in the sense of so many cases not being pursued. The on the run notes, the promises made to members that they could come home because no cases were pending against them. All sorts of ways in which the IRA benefited through the peace process. In effect, the police, the RUC, the Royal Ulster Constabulary, disarmed before the IRA did.
Malachi, just for particularly younger listeners to this show who will not be aware very much of Gerry Adams, the way they might be aware of it is if they've been watching Say Nothing. The dramatisation of the superb book. And obviously, one feature of that is it basically depicts very clearly Gerry Adams' role in the IRA. Yeah. And then at the very end of each show, it says Gerry Adams has always denied he's a member of the IRA. Can you just explain to particularly those young listeners that weirdness, that incongruity? Why is it that Gerry Adams has always been so insistent that he was not involved in the IRA?
One of the suggestions raised by the judge in the libel action that I was seeing off was that a senior Republican might deny involvement or refuse to concede involvement because it would be subject to civil action. The IRA was involved in the murder of something like 1,400 people. There's an awful lot of angry people out there who have suffered great loss because of the actions of the IRA. So if there was a prospect, and there is a case in process where people are trying to take a case against Gerry Adams specifically. So I think Gerry Adams has good grounds for denying that he was in the IRA. But there's an anomaly here as well, and that is that many others who were in the IRA don't deny it and don't get the same criticism, the same attention that Gerry Adams does. It's almost as if Gerry Adams...
Martin McGuinness, it was...
Well, Martin McGuinness, Conor Murphy, currently a finance minister in Stormont, several of the... Jerry Kelly, well, he talked about... He's proud of his past in the IRA, but there are other government ministers we've had at Stormont who were members of the IRA and did not get that scrutiny. And I think there's some oddity there. One, in some sense, I think that maybe Gerry Adams is like a lightning rod for that scrutiny, for that attention. I also think there's something about his own personal character, an air of smugness about him, which just annoys people. So they tend to go after him more than they go after others.
Malachi, brilliant to talk to you. I don't know how you managed to do that in 10 minutes. It was fabulous.
Thank you so much.
Read the book.
Thanks, Malachi.
Yeah, we might be back. I hate to tell you, but thank you.
You're very welcome.
Do.
Thank you very much indeed.
The Newsagents. This is a Global Player original podcast.